This is page 207. This is the independent practice for lesson 8.1. Welcome to try as much of these on your own as you'd like. Just make sure you check your answers either by watching the video or by asking the teacher. Alright, number 8 reads 23 over 50 equals blank over 100. I guess that we should read the directions first. Shade the grid to represent the ratio, then find the missing number. Well, if you multiply 50 by 2, you get 100, which means you have to do the same thing with the first term, so you get 46. And then you need to shade 46. Whether you shade vertically or horizontally, you can just count by 10s, 20, 30, 40, and 6. Same thing over here, except you're going to multiply by 5. 20 times 5 is 100. 11 times 5 is 55. And 55 hundredths would be 5 columns and 5 singles. That's 50 and 5. So we got 46% and then 55%. Alright, moving on. Question 10 reads, Mark wants to use a grid like the ones in exercises 1 and 2 to model the percent equivalent of the fraction 2/3. How many grid squares should he shade? What percent would his model show? So what this is saying is, could you shade in 2/3 of these? And the answer is yes, kind of. 2/3 of 100, though, that's what we have to do here. 2/3 of 100 is kind of tricky. So let's go off to the side here and write 2/3 of or times 100. Well, you can't simplify. You would end up getting 200 over 3. And 200 over 3 is the same thing as 200 divided by 3. And 3 does go into 26 times. 6 times 3 is 18. And you get 2, so you get 20 again. 3 goes into 26 times. 6 times 3 is 18. So you get 66 with the remainder of 2. And that remainder of 2 can be a fraction over the divisor of 3. So how many grid squares would he shade? It's 66 and 2/3. What percent would this be? It's 66 and 2/3%. Now you've seen this one before on page, that was page 205. We can go back and look at it. Maybe we will, in fact. Let's go back to page 205. This is the same question as we're looking at right here. Pay attention to what I highlight here. 2/3 is equal to 66 and 2/3%. So that is the same question that's being asked right here. If you had 100 grids, it's being asked a little bit differently. If you have 100 grids, I'm on number 10, and you need to shade 2/3 of them, how many grid squares should he shade? Well, 2/3, I'm going to write it this way. 2/3 of 100 is equal to 66 and 2/3 grid squares, which is equal to 66 and 2/3%. It's probably just worth memorizing that 1/3 is equal to 33 and 1/3, and 2/3 is equal to 66 and 2/3. Okay, moving on. Number 11 reads, the ratios of saves for a baseball pitcher to the number of save opportunities are given for 3 relief pitchers. Write each ratio as a percent. Order the percents from least to greatest. So you're supposed to take 9/10 and write that as a percent, and 4/5 and write that as a percent, and 17/20 and write that as a percent. Now 9/10 should be easy. That's 90. 4/5 I've asked you to memorize. That's 80. 17/20 is one we're going to have to compute by multiplying by 5. Now why are we multiplying by 5? Because 20 times 5 is 100. And if you multiply the second term by 5, you have to multiply the first term by 5. 17 times 5 is 85. 85 out of 100 is 85%. So my 3% are 90, 80, and 85, and it asks me to write them as a percent and then order them least to greatest. Least would be 80%. And then 85%, then 90%. Now, if you're wondering how mathematically I got the first two, 9/10 is 90, I just had that one memorized. And 4/5 is 80, I just had that one memorized. I've gone over with you multiple times now that 1/5 would be 20%, so 2/5 would be 40, 3/5 would be 60, 4/5 would be 80. I just memorized it. Alright, moving on. Questions number 12 and 13 ask you, the directions read, circle the greater quantity. And so we're circling more. What's more here, 1/3 or 50%? 1/3 of a box of corn crinkles, or 50%? This is one of those problems where we use a greater than or less than sign. And there's different ways to think about this. You could draw a picture, or you could convert. 1/3 is the same as 33 and 1/3%. Well, 50% is greater than 33 and 1/3%, so I'm going to circle 50%. And on number 13, we've got 30%. We're comparing that to a fourth, and a fourth is 25%. So we don't have to guess. 30% is greater than 25%, than 1/4. So I'm going to circle this one right here. Okay, we were supposed to circle the greater quantity. Alright, questions number 14 and 15. Number 14 reads, explain how you could write 35% as the sum of two benchmark percents. Sum means addition, so we're going to go look for two benchmarks that would add up to 35%. That's not going to be hard at all. I think they're probably both going to be on this benchmark page. So I'm going to go back to, it's right here. Can you find two numbers on there that would add up to 35%? It's right here. It's 10% and 25%. That's all we have to do. It's really simple. Explain how to write 35% as the sum of two benchmark percents or as a multiple of a percent. I would just write it as this. 35% is equal to 25% plus 10%. That's all we had to do. Much easier than you thought. Number 15 reads, use the percent bar model to find the missing percent. What's missing is what 1/8 is, and this is a tricky one. Now, if we didn't have any information here, if we didn't know what this was, we would count. How many sections are there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And they all look to be the same. So one way to get the amount that each of these blocks make up is to divide 100% by 8. There's 8 sections, and they total up to 100%. So I'm going to do that up here because I need a little bit of space. 100 divided by 8. And watch what I do here. It's pretty simple. 8 goes into 10 once. 1 times 8 is 8. 10 minus 8 is 2. Drop to 0. 8 goes into 20 twice. 2 times 8 is 16. And I get a remainder. But in this case, I need to annex a decimal and keep going. When you put your decimal here, you have to bring it up to your answer. 8 goes into 40 5 times. 5 times 8 is 40. I get no remainder. What does that mean? Well, it means that each of these sections would be 12.5%. And we can prove that various ways. One way we could prove it is there's 8 sections, so we could multiply that by 12.5. I expect my answer to be 100. 8 times 12.5 is 100. That proves it, that it's right. Another interesting way of looking at it would be this. 1/4, 2/4, 3/4. So this is 1/4. Do you guys agree with that? This would be 2/4, which is the same as a half. And this would be 3/4. Watch this. If an eighth is 12.5% and I added up 12.5 plus 12.5, I should get, well, 12.5 plus 12.5 is 12 plus 12 is 24, plus this one adds up to 1 whole, so it's going to be 25. And that should make sense because 1/4 is 25%. So I kind of went a little overboard in explaining this, and really I should kind of undo all this mess, because the answer to this one right here is 1/8 is equal to 12.5%. Cool. You are done with page 207. Good work.